we arrive in Munich with plenty of time to check into our apartment before visiting the Springfest, Munich's springtime version of Octoberfest. Our first stop is one of the beer gardens, called the Hippodrome. With some unusual things on the menu, like radish trays and bread served with lard and cucumbers, we decided on going with something a little simpler. A sampler plate with 6 little sausages, sauerkraut, and hot potato salad with cucumbers. I also had a half liter of beer, and Marianne had some wine, all for €24.
Right, so you don't want to be right below or downwind.
Yeah, I can see that. The carnival food included a lot of chocolate-covered fruit, various sausages, and yes, raw fish sandwiches. From the carnival grounds, we saw this church with some interesting gargoyles, so we thought it was worth a visit. The next morning, we start off with a visit to Nymphenburg Palace. The palace has been the summer residence of many of the Bavarian royalty since its construction in the mid-1600s. This amazing room, in the Rococo style, is the Great Hall, and has remained unchanged since 1758. As we make our way to the gardens, we pass through the Marstall Museum, the former riding stables, now housing a large collection of carriages. The area around the palace is huge and consists of a number of different pavilions. This one is called Amalienburg. It is a small palace and hunting lodge. Also in the Rococo style, it was built by Emperor Joseph I for his daughter. This is called Badenburg, the House of Baths. The main feature inside the bathhouse is, of course, the bath, the size of a small swimming pool. This one is called the Pagodenburg and is built to resemble a Chinese drawing room and is decorated with blue and white Delft Dutch tiles. Our last stop is a small residence called Magdalenenklause. Within it is a small chapel, entirely decorated as an underwater grotto. It was after 4 by the time we left the palace, and we decided to spend the rest of the afternoon at the Englischer Garten. Here's something you don't see much in the United States anymore: cigarette vending machines. Soon after we arrived, we followed some music to, of course, another beer garden. Being a good time for dinner, we grabbed some bratwurst, along with some sweet cabbage and potatoes fried with onions, and of course some beer and hard apple cider. We're spending the day at the German Museum of Masterpieces of Science and Technology, also called the Deutsches Museum. We start off in the basement, where they have replicas of different types of mines. This was one of my favorite places when I visited here 34 years ago. There's really a wide variety of displays, ranging from turn-of-the-century mechanics to the latest in nanotechnology. Not much has changed in the old engine rooms, but I remember the electricity demonstration, where they'd shoot lightning bolts from one end of a long hall to the other. Now, that display has been toned down quite a bit. Marianne was very impressed with the microscope collection. Some of the very first microscopes developed are displayed here. There were quite a few exhibits we didn't have time to see, but the musical instrument room had some very unusual pieces. We tried not to spend too much time in each exhibit, but there was just way too much to take in just one day. Our last day in Munich is spent on a day trip into Austria, with our first stop being the Hallein Salt Mines. The mines are located in the foothills of the Alps, just outside Salzburg. The first part of our 90-minute tour consists of putting on white pants and shirts in preparation for our train ride into the mines. Our tour consisted of riding these trains, along with a short boat ride on a saltwater pond. We also slid down 2 wooden slides that the miners would use to get into deeper parts of the mine, before watching some movies on how the salt was extracted. We were expecting to see veins of salt being dug up, but all the salt here is dissolved in water, then pumped to the surface for drying. So the only salt we actually did see was in the gift shop. Before leaving, we walked through a recreation of an old Ice Age Celtic village they called Salina. It was a short drive to Salzburg, where we'll just be wandering around for the afternoon. Throughout the trip, Marianne was surprised with the number of statues we saw of horses, with water spraying out of their nostrils, like this one in Chapter Square. It reminded her of a horse she had as a child that would always sneeze on her. Nearby we visited the Salzburg Cathedral, with the statues of the 4 evangelists, St. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, greeting you at the door. And once inside, you're treated to a gorgeous interior, where Wolfgang Mozart was baptized here in 1756. The cathedral was repaired after World War II, when a single bomb came crashing through the central dome. Always looking for a market, we spent some time here, enjoying some of the samples and tiding us over until dinner. We bought a sweet fig loaf at this stand that reminded me a lot of the filling we use in our Christmas cookies. This is Getreidagasse Street, known for its wrought iron signs. They originally advertised different guild services, but now they serve as shop signs. Branching out from the main street were a lot of these little courtyards, selling all sorts of interesting items. On our way back to Munich, we take some of the back roads to enjoy the countryside. We start off the day with a visit to the small town of Oberammergau. This small town is known for its passion plays, as well as its beautifully decorated buildings. But one thing we don't want to miss is to see the many traditional Bavarian wood carvings. Not wanting to leave empty-handed, we gave this little guy a new home. The mountain peaks are getting taller as we travel along the foothills to our next stop, Linderhof Palace. This was the royal villa of Ludwig II, and the only residence he was able to complete and live in during his life. The terraced gardens and fountains have a distinctive Italian Renaissance feel to them. The sprawling gardens have a number of surprises throughout them, including a Moroccan-style house and a Moorish kiosk that was originally built for the World Expo in Paris in 1867. There's also a theater behind this cave-like entrance, built to resemble an underground grotto, complete with a boat sitting on a lake. The building and its decor is influenced by mid-18th century France and its very ornate Rococo style. It also has its own Hall of Mirrors, a much smaller version of the one in Versailles. The scenery around the grounds is just spectacular, and these pictures really don't do it justice. Just up the road is Hohenschwangau Castle. This was the home where Ludwig II grew up in. It has a long history. but ended up being the official summer and hunting residence of King Ludwig's parents, King Maximilian I and his wife Maria of Prussia. We had to wait a little while for the English tour, which started at 4 o'clock, but it gave us some time to enjoy the grounds. After the tour, we walked back to town and took a shuttle up to Marienbrücke, Mary's Bridge, which is high in a chasm above Neuschwanstein Castle. After walking down to the castle, we waited for the 6 p.m. tour, the last tour of the day. The castle was really never finished, and King Ludwig only lived there for about 3 months during the construction, before he was proclaimed mad for putting the country into debt with his extravagant building projects. Soon after that proclamation, he was found dead in a lake just outside of Munich. We finish our time up in Bavaria with a night in Füssen. Tomorrow we'll be driving through the Alps with a short visit into Switzerland.